As you know, the title of my message this morning is Strengthening Your Core. I know you all enjoyed unpacking your backpack last time. Now let's just strengthen our core, see how that goes. But I was thinking about this in terms of my own life and how when your core is shaken, when you get gut punched by life and hurricanes of life, you don't just strengthen your core in a minute. You're strengthening your core over time. But how do we do that? So the core muscles that we have in our body, these are the three things that those core muscles do for us. And that is they give us stability, they give us balance, and they give us posture. So I prayed on that, and I thought about how to bring a message about that to you this morning, because it's really speaking to me. And I really do think that as you speak, you have to give a personal message, because when you walk with the Lord as long as I have, I better have something to say that's personal and current. Or I go back on all the old things. You have to have things to say. So I wanted to make the comparison to strengthening your core physically to how we do it spiritually. And I know all of us have experienced gut punches over the years, like those things that you cannot even hardly talk about. There's such a big gut punch, and you know you've been punched in the gut for sure. And in the 80s and 90s, they talked a lot about core and all that, and so I decided to take Pilates. Oh boy. And I can hardly walk in the straight line without falling or tripping. So I went to this specialist for Pilates, and I was going to strengthen my core. And I was feeling pretty good, I was on the machine. She was telling me what to do until she turned me towards the mirror. Don't you just hate when they do that? Now you watch what you're doing. And immediately I thought of National Geographic and those beached walruses, that come up and they flap, this way and they flap that way. And I said to her, do I really look that bad? And she tried to be nice. And she said, everybody doesn't like the way they look when they look in the mirror. I said, well, could we turn it around, please? And let me dream the dream. Another friend of mine, she started on exercise balls, those big exercise balls. And she said all the little skinny girls were there, and she's got her body there, and she said, oh, I can do this. And she's flipping on the ball. Ooh, they're doing the music, and they're doing their thing. And all of a sudden, the instructor said, now everybody get off the ball. And she said, I couldn't get off the ball. And she said all the young girls were flipping and doing the next thing and on the balance and this and that. I'm still on the ball. And so she said, what do I do? Do I roll off? Do I fall off? So she said, I just went off to the side. And I fell, and she said that was my last core ball exercise. So we don't go to strengthen our core and go right away, and then we climb a mountain or we run a marathon. And I want to brag on my granddaughter because she's 16 and she drove from Toronto to Collingwood yesterday. I think that's a pretty good core strength thing. We're very proud of her. She got there and parked and everything. So building a core in your spirit is a long process. And trust and faith take constant practice. And so life can kick you in the gut for sure. And then you have to decide. And I heard a pastor speak, and this was after I had been kicked in my gut, and he said, those kinds of times, either you go away from God or you go towards God. Either you say, I'm done, I can't do it anymore, or you have to go towards him. And he said, I really did realize that it's sort of like Peter says, where else do I have to go? Remember when Jesus asked him if he's going to leave? And Peter says, where else can we go? Because you hold the words of eternal life. So you kind of feel that way after you work through some things. Where else do I really go? Where else do I really go? So when we have those kicks in the gut, the first thing that we really do have to work on is our balance. Because your balance is totally thrown off. Everything that you ever knew before the event, whatever your event might have been, is changed. So you're off balance. You don't go to the same places. You can't do the same things. You don't have the same mental capacity to handle much else. And so then you have to find your balance again. So at first you're just flapping around, you're just surviving. You're just trying your best to really get ourselves together. And that balance is often found in community. Everybody's shaking their head. Your balance is found in community, where you can go and feel safe. And I have a lot of my safe people here today. They all turn up, see? The safe people turn up. But those are the people that will get you through, is your community of people who will help you to regain your balance. And sometimes it's just going out for some fun. And Rose won't mind me saying that after her and I had some gut punches, we went to the Collingwood Fair. And I don't think we laughed as hard in years at that fair. For one thing, we went to see the chickens, and all the chickens had the flu. So we thought, well, that makes sense. All the chickens have the flu. So we bought rubber chickens, the one I used and squeaked at the last children's story, right? So you go with people where you can get out of where you are and you have some joy. My grandchildren give me all kinds of joy. And my daughter and Mike too, but yeah, they're good too. So we have to find that community. You also find stability, and I would say you find your stability. I mean, I didn't pray a lot after Bruce passed. I was just not very happy. But gradually, you know, as I said before, Jesus and I kind of broke up for a while, you know. You're not my boyfriend, you know. But then I got, like Peter, where else do I go? Because you hold the words of eternal life. So as I got back into that, then my stability started to grow again in my faith. But it doesn't happen overnight. But the most important thing, and this is what I want to talk about for a while, is your posture changes. And when you go through things, you either look like this, you're navel-gazing constantly. Why me? Poor me. What about me? And you're navel-gazing. Or as you get that stability in your life again, your posture changes that you can look out again. You can actually, I'm not looking at myself as much anymore. I'm not feeling sorry for myself as much anymore. I'm not as wounded anymore. I can look out and see the others that are perhaps going to be my community, where I can go and take a part in their lives. So the disciples. When Jesus chose the disciples, as you know, he didn't choose the really, really smart guys. You know, he didn't really choose the people who were already successful. He chose people that he saw their heart. And he knew that they were the ones that he called, because he called each one. He didn't have a raffle. He didn't say, he didn't put up signs and say, whoever would like to follow me, come along. He picked them specifically for what he needed for that time. So in the 3 years that he spent with them, the first thing he did for them was he moved them from being self-centered to being centered on others. Every ministry that Jesus did, in whether it was healing or feeding the 5,000 or whatever he was doing, the disciples were with him, and they had to work. And as I was praying on this message, I thought that's really true. They had to work. When Jesus blessed the loaves and fishes, and they were going to feed the 5,000, who had to go give out the baskets? It was the disciples. And they had the basket. They probably didn't know there was anything in it, maybe, until they got going. And then they went and they worked that crowd. They put them in 50s, and then they went and got the basket, and then they came back and had more than when, of course, they started with. But they had to do the work. I wish I would have been with Jesus and the disciples when Jesus said to his disciples, "Today we go to Samaria." I bet you they were really happy, high-fiving, oh, good, the place where they're going to kill us. This is the end. No Jews go to Samaria. We don't come out alive. So, and they said, well, and they even says in the Bible, we got a better way, Jesus. There's a straighter path to get where we're going next. We don't have to go through Samaria. And he said, no, I have something I have to do there. And they went, oh, boy, Jesus, I don't understand. They're going to kill us. They're going to kill us. They're going to kill us. So he went. And when they got to Samaria and he wanted to meet the woman at the well, he knew that she was coming, he sent them ahead. He didn't need them right then. They were already having a bad attitude. He just knew that they weren't really in it to win it that day. So he said, go on and get the food and I'll meet you later. Come on back later. So Jesus took that Samaritan woman. Now let's look at who she was. She was Samaritan. So she was hated. She was a woman never used for anything. Like, women had no place in that time in history. And she evangelized Samaria. So the disciples come back, and there he is talking to the woman. He says, they say to him, what are you doing? He said, this is why I came. And then the ministry just expanded all through Samaria. So he tested everything in them. You know, they ate the grains of wheat on the Sabbath when they weren't supposed to. He had women in his ministry. He went to the Gentiles. He healed all the same, whether you're Gentile or Jew. He did all of that, and it blew their minds. Can you imagine them trying to keep up with that? It was a lot. And that's what Jesus expects of us today, too, that we can strengthen our core to put up with more than we think we can. Also, Jesus touched the unclean. And that was a huge no-no in the Jewish faith. The unclean were totally ostracized. They were outside the camp. So when he healed the woman with the issue of blood, when he healed the lepers, when he healed the unclean, there were times the disciples did not want Jesus to touch them because it made them all unclean. And then they felt that was going to stop the ministry. But Jesus went ahead and did what he knew the Father had told him to do, and to spread the good news for everybody. And the disciples learned. And the reason he had to do that is because he knew what was coming for them when he left. And if you don't have to read very far to find out that the lives of the disciples were not all roses and parades. They had a hard road to follow. And they were able to do that because Jesus taught them how. And he built their inner strength. Now, I think that the bookmarks get passed out at the door. Oh, they're at the back. Okay. Well, on that bookmark, and I'm going to just speak a little bit longer because I want to share with you what has strengthened my core over these years. And I know I've talked about Mama Wandoa before. We've kept in touch through every catastrophe of life, hers and mine, and she was the woman that I went and I delivered kits with in Tanzania for sleeping children. So she has taught me what a core value is. I want to tell you a little bit about sleeping children's core value. When Dave Dryden started Sleeping Children, it was sleeping children, but it's for the children. Those are the 3 words that are the core of the whole organization. So he said the volunteers have to pay their own way, they pay their own expenses, they go on their own time, and there's no tax receipt for their charitable, things they're doing. And so so it's sort of like Jesus, who are you going to get? Well, you're not going to get a person who's not willing to go, because you're not really getting any kind of tax break or you're not getting any kind of tourist deal. Like, I was in India, never saw the Taj Mahal. Never. I was in all these countries, and very seldom did I ever see anything that was a tourist attraction. We were down in the villages with the children. So it wasn't even thought of that we would get to go and do some of those things, unless you want to stay an extra week, but not when we're there with the sleeping children. So when I met Mama, she knew what that core value was. It was all for the children. All for the children. And so she would be there. If we went to a distribution site and we left at 4 a.m. and drove for 5 hours, she left at 2 a.m. and she was there 2 hours ahead of us, having it all ready. So it was all for the children. And so during those times she was also doing that. She's a very, very devout Christian. She was also running a grassroots AIDS clinic from her home, where she would take in the poorest of the women, especially, who had AIDS, so she could get them some form of medication, if she could, and then she would stay with them until they got close to death, and then she would take them to the hospital to die a death of dignity. So that was her mission, besides doing all the other things she was doing. So she has gone through so much. She's lost children. She's lost husbands. We're not sure how many she had. Bruce asked her and she wouldn't tell. She's lost her best friends. A lot of them have died. A man from the UN who was I met when I was over there, he was the one that looked after her bank account, so that when money was sent, he would look after it, because if you gave Mama money, she gave it to everybody, and she never had any. So he said, I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to hold the purse strings, but if you send money from your church, when Bruce and I had the church, she's going to give it all away in the first day. And then she won't have any for herself. But he was killed in a bike accident. So her eyes are always in the posture of looking out. And I saw that when she stayed with us. You never really know a person until they live with you, right? They can fool you. They can fool you from a distance. But she lived with us for, a little while when she came from Tanzania. And she was at our house. I can say to you that she knows how to grieve. Because when she was going through grief, she knew how to grieve. We had emails going back and forth. She was grieving. She was grieving, and she didn't pretend she wasn't. She didn't say any platitude or anything like that. She went through it, and she went through it in her community of her church in Tanzania. So when she stayed with us, she said, when I said to you before, I said, what time do you go to bed, Mom, and what time do you get up? She said, I go to bed when the sun goes down, I get up when the sun comes up. I said, okay, that works. Well, that's what we'll do. She said, I don't know what time it is. I said, well, that's okay. And, here we are setting our, our watches, dee, dee, dee. She said, when the sun comes up, I get up, and when the sun goes down, I go to bed. So when she would come out to the kitchen table to sit with Bruce, especially during his Bible study time, she was dressed, her bedroom was clean, she had her Bible reading done, and she was in prayer, and she was ready to go. What are we going to do today? What can I do to help somebody today? What are we going to do today? And she was looking for an opportunity. So I had a group of people over to the house to meet her. And she was in full Tanzanian garb. And so she had spent some time with me, and I had the chance to ask her, Mama, I want to learn from you. This is important. I don't know how many years I'm going to have to learn from you, but I got to learn this stuff. I know it's really important. So I said, how do you go through it? How do you go through all those deaths and the poverty you see? And sometimes you're hungry and you don't have money for the AIDS clinic. And she said, I gave you the bookmark, I'm not moved by the circumstances of my life. I am moved by God. And if I wasn't moved by God, I'd just give up, because there's no hope. There's no hope. So I asked her the other question too. I said to her, do you have a lot, and don't take this wrong, but I said, do you have a lot of social justice stuff in your country? Like I said, do you fight over a lot of things, politics and all that? She said, well, basically we try to pick the least corrupt government. She said, because they're all corrupt, so we try to get the best one of the bunch. But she said, really, it's never for sure, and, it doesn't really work that way. She said, to be honest, she said, I know there's things, but she said, I'm too busy because I'm here for the children. She knows her core. I'm here for the children. If I get sidetracked by all the other stuff, then I won't be here for the children. So her core is the strongest that I've ever witnessed. And her work ethic is the core of her resilience. And I think that is something that is so important in our culture today, that we really understand the real value of hard work. And your core value is only as good as the work you're willing to put into it. You can have all kinds of core values, but if you're not willing to put the work into it. And I've been thinking about my dad a lot lately. My dad was a great guy. He was good to the grandchildren and my children. But when I was 16, he said, it's time you got a full-time job in the summer. I thought, oh, good. And so he helped me look for one. Isn't that great? And he got me one at Sears at the catalog center town. It was a tough job. Like it was for the catalog. And so there were boxes on both sides, like lined the whole wall with all the catalog numbers on. I could probably give you some of them already. Still, the color of the shirt, the size, the price, and we would get what they called mail. These cards would come down a chute, and we were given so many cards to do in so many minutes. We had a cart. We had glue, we had bags, we had a stapler if it worked, and we would be given maybe 3 or 4 aisles. And we'd go up and down those aisles, and up and down those aisles, and fill the orders, and then take them to a conveyor belt, and then come back and get the next mail. And if you didn't get your mails done, you didn't have lunch. So, everybody was trying really hard to get those done. Well, I was glad when the summer was over, and I thought, good, oh man, that was hard. And my dad said, I just heard some good news. They're hiring students on Saturdays for the year. I said, oh boy, great. He said, that would be great for you. He said, I think that'd be great for you. You want to go to Europe? That's a good place. This is a good place to earn money. I'll drive you every Saturday. I think you should go. So every Saturday, I get up and he'd drive me down. In this place we were working, it was all students now. The regular folk were off on Saturday. And they would seal the aisles with this terrible glue. Like the dust had to be down in the areas we were working. So they would glue the aisles and they'd rope them off. So we wouldn't go around the corner with our carts. And so this Saturday, one of the guys, he's probably 16 as well, forgot to rope off the aisle. So I went zooming by with my cart, went down, fell, hit my head on the concrete, slid right along about halfway down the aisle with that glue all up my back. So I called my dad and I said, Dad, I've hurt myself at work. And so he came and got me. He said, oh, that's too bad. So I went and had a bath and it was noon. I thought, the whole afternoon, my head hurts, but it's worth it. I get to stay home. And so I came out of the bathroom and he said, are you ready? I said, for what? He said, to go back to work. I said, Dad, I don't have to go. Like some parents would sue the company, right? My dad's taking me back. And I said, Dad, I heard, my head cut. No, you gave them your word, Nancy. You're going to do it, and you're going to do it. And I'm going to take you back to work. So years later, I asked him the question, Dad, I got to ask you this one. I said, why on earth did you drive me back to work that day? I never understood it. He said it was the hardest thing I ever did through your whole childhood. He said, but I knew that you needed to know that when you commit to something and you can still do it, you show up. And, we know Granddad was like that. He showed up. He showed up for everything. So work is the core of resilience. And Bruce was working on top of the greenhouses when I was working on Saturday, so it wasn't like we could get together anyway. So it wasn't like we had the time. But what I want to ask you today is, when trouble comes, how is your core? How do you find your core is? And it can be little things. It doesn't have to be big things. It can be little things. But how do you find your core? How do you think you're doing? Have you spent too much time looking down? And I'm going to say something, and because this person's not in this area or anything like that. But when I was going through my grieving, I had someone say to me, this is going to blow your mind really, but I had someone say to me, your grieving really is ruining my Zen. And I thought, well, for one thing, then you don't have much Zen. Because, if it's ruining your Zen, then you don't have Zen. And then I had someone else say to me, well, at least he didn't leave you for another woman and you're seeing him around town with her. Now, what do you say? Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. So it's like if there was a graduating, like I lost him, but at least he didn't leave me for another woman and she's not in town. I thought, yeah. So I thought, well, I ruined somebody's Zen and then something else. So you got to pick your community carefully. There's community and then there's community. So pick your community, and it's trial and error, right? But anyway, I have a great community around them. And so are you willing to let God lead and not your circumstances? I believe that we all kind of know deep inside what our core value is and maybe what we could be doing. But we think we're too old. We think we're done. We don't think we can do it. But I'm here to say that we can do it because God gives us strength and Christ is our example. So, amen.